6%? 7%? That's a lot of money. I might as well just do it myself. Well, that might be true, if a lot of that money you're paying a real estate broker is going toward outdated methods, unnecessary fancy offices, and overpaying executives for a lifetime of service. But you don't need to go that route. Silver Compass Realty is a full-service real estate brokerage serving all of South Central Wisconsin, and the commission is negotiable. Silver Compass will explain exactly what they're going to do to help you buy or sell a home, how that will help you reach your goals, and stand right beside you every step of the way. They want to be your broker, your expert, even when you're not in the middle of a transaction. Silver Compass Realty, helping you find your way home. Contact them today at silvercompassrealty.com or call 608-361-8608. Silver Compass Realty, helping you find your way home.
Would you like to experience being one of the free people who produce their own meat and eggs? PurelyPoultry.com has both the chickens and supplies you need to raise your own poultry.
Would you like pets who produce eggs you can barter with? Your own source of clean meat?
A swan on your pond to make your home strikingly beautiful?
How about some pheasants and quail roaming in your woods for enjoyment? If so, check out PurelyPoultry.com.
Burger House 41 is open at 1860 West Mason in Green Bay. You're invited to indulge in one of life's simplest pleasures, a great burger. We're grilling up 15 fresh signature burgers and have over 30 craft beers for the perfect pairing. Experience Wisconsin's best flavors, including white cheddar cheese curds, a variety of specialty sandwiches, milkshakes, and gourmet frozen custard. Burger House 41 at 1860 West Mason is open at 11 a.m. daily. Taste Wisconsin. Taste amazing.
We're back with the Free People Show, episode 20. Listen to us at freepeopleshow.com. Watch us on Facebook. Go to our website, freepeopleshow.com, to find out all the various platforms on which you can listen to us. So Patrick and I are back. Miles had to step out for a minute. Something I want to talk about tonight, but I think plays into this whole thing that's going on, not only with Democrats, but with Republicans. And I think it starts with the idea of people knowing what's better for other people, as opposed to people being allowed to decide for themselves and accept the risk thereof. And it goes back a long way, about 150 years or so. Right after the Civil War, a few things were going on. First of all, Charles Darwin's books came out, and people really latched onto those, especially the academic elite, and sort of formed this idea that rather than having natural rights and you know the way that they understood human beings and races before, that it was sort of a moving target, that people could be improved, that there were ways that they could influence the course of society and the economy, and that basically Darwin had just opened the door to that. At the same time, starting in 1870 through about 1910, the economy of the United States quadrupled in size, and tons of immigrants flowed in. Those are not cause and effect necessarily. I'm sure the immigrants were flowing in here from various places because there was opportunity, but also they created opportunity too, and they were part of the fuel of the engine.
Expansion of the economy and the influx of immigrants probably were related.
Exactly.
In a positive way.
Exactly. There was a lot going on. In the meantime, there are people who, among which Charles Ely, who was the chair of the economics department at the University of Wisconsin, who were basically trying to find a way to understand how they could have an influence as academics. A lot of the people in the group that formed the American Economics Union in 1885 were people who were either had been to divinity school or theology school, or who came from families that were actually over half of the people that belonged to that original progressive movement had this messianic idea that they needed to do things to sort of calm the chaos that they were seeing. The chaos, there was economic chaos, true. The country was growing. There was massive consolidation of companies into trusts. That's one of the things that Teddy Roosevelt, a progressive himself, was trying to manage. There were thousands of companies that basically merged into about 150 or 160 or so massive firms in the late 19th century, early 20th century. There was a prolonged depression in the middle of the 1890s, lasted about 5 years, and there was all this immigration going on. And the fuel of it was back to Darwin. The academics had the idea that they had a field, that they had a course to pursue based on their desire to be a better influence, that they could control society for the better. So that's where the progressive movement came from. Charles Ely was a professor at Dartmouth. One of his students was Woodrow Wilson, among other people. All the people that participated in this movement in the early 20th century, the progressives, they became known as the progressives, came out of this school of thought that they needed to do something because people didn't have the natural rights that the early classical liberals espoused, but that they were basically had become or could be seen as an organism. The state was an organism. As a matter of fact, some of these folks of Christian background claim that God was working through the state, even more so than the churches at the time. Direct quotes from some of them. But they studied under German scholars and had this idea that was going on in Germany in the 1870s and 1880s that the state was a political organism, that you could manage the economy to control what was going on, et cetera, et cetera. So then we have birth in the early 20th century of all the things that we now look at as libertarians or people who love liberty as the scourge of the 20th century and things that caused massive chaos and theft and coercion. And if you line them all up in this idea that the state, meaning the United States, was one massive polity, one massive organism, one massive thing to be managed, you can see why these things happen, the creation of the Fed. It might seem unrelated that the amendment, I don't remember which one, that created direct election of senators was also an erosion of states' rights and more making the United States a more powerful entity. Prohibition was part of this movement as well. Minimum wage, abortion laws, all of these things were cooked up by people, including John Maynard Keynes, who in Berlin in 1923 basically said that his economic plans would include ways to manage the economy and the population so that the undesirable elements would be suppressed and the desirable elements would be brought forward. This was a common eugenicist ideas were considered a legitimate science at this time. How do we best manage the population? We who know so much, we who have invented the art and study of economics and political economy, we who know better than all these people who just come from overseas, from wherever, all these people that now aren't white Protestants anymore, but have come from Eastern, Southern Europe, are mostly Catholic, Jews, Orthodox Christians. Our country has changed radically in 30 years, and it did change radically. But what happens now? The people that are still in charge, the people at the universities, what do? Well, we manage it. For who? For how? Our understanding is that we manage it in a way that's most productive. So they look down on people of color. They look down on different religions other than Protestant Christianity, and they brought forth this idea that they needed to manage it for people, and that is the progressivism. Now, I'm not saying the progressives now are racists and eugenicists, but the idea that there's an elite, that there's science involved in politics, and that there's a state that needs to be watching what we do and making decisions for us because we don't know any better. That has not only crept past the 1920s and 30s all the way to today, and not only just in the progressives, but also the Democrats, and now even in the Republicans, because there's money to be made in that.
Well, the Republicans are just every bit as much progressives now as
in that
Democrats
sense.
are.
Oh yeah.
Because they've all bought into the same basic idea, which is that the fundamental progressive idea is that an elite core, an elite cadre of well-educated, knowledgeable people are best suited to run things for all of us. And that on the surface that sounds like it might not be a terrible idea, but in practice what it is meant is that particular ideas, particular concepts, particular viewpoints have been driven out of academia to begin with, and driven out of government. That's what's happened to the Republican Party. Once they got power in their hands, and they've been lusting after power for all these years. They want to wield it, and that's the problem with progressives and with whatever variety you want to call them, Republicans, Democrats, or whatever. They want power. They want to wield it. They don't want to let it go. They don't want to devolve it down out of their hands into a lower level of government.
Because there's not money in that.
Well, it's
an influence in that.
There's some of that, but it's not just about money. It's about they don't want to let go of shaping the vision. They don't want to let go of shaping the direction of this country. They don't want to let go of the idea of setting the goals for what this country should be. we just announced that we're going to send a couple thousand more troops to Afghanistan.
5,000.
5,000. Who in the American public is in favor of that?
Who has even noticed?
Is that if that was on a referendum, would that pass?
Women in pink hats.
Yeah. Pussy hats are fighting war. No, they're not.
Yep.
There's so many things that our government does that if it was put to a referendum, it would lose decisively.
Well, that's one.
Do you
think
think
people would vote? Would people vote
healthcare
themselves less
boondoggle?
benefits though? The way that the federal government hands out money and hands out entitlements,
sure.
they wouldn't vote for any less of that. I'm
People
sure
would vote for that's what people do. By the way,
they vote themselves
for
other people's money.
They vote for the general idea of getting benefits from the government. They vote for they vote in favor of candidates who promise to do things to those other people.
Yeah, I was thinking the other night, if you took almost any phrase, like how something happens now, as the government, and you just use the term "other people," what kind of healthcare are we looking at? Other people's paid for healthcare.
Yeah.
Basically, the government is other people. It's
We
exercising
are the other people.
Everybody's the other people, and that's why it's such a lousy way to do it.
When you're talking about a massive tax system, unless you're poor, and you can say that there's a poverty tax. That's a concept I'm not going to get into tonight, but the poverty tax is basically the idea that there's all these burdens in society that make it impossible to rise out of poverty, and part of that burden is the government is in the way to some degree.
Well, like Miles was talking about, homeless people having access to
that's a great example.
How do they get that?
Yeah,
how do they do that?
How do they do that?
They're barely functioning at all on a day-to-day basis.
Well, go to www.healthcare.gov
And just bring out your Social Security card,
right? Yeah,
driver's license with your home address,
proof of identity, all that
right.
stuff.
I guarantee you that a well-motivated charitable institution, private charitable institution, would do a much better job of some of those things than the government does. Now, we've had arguments before about whether we can go to that stage from where we are now.
Well, I'm thankful that you're not using the word magic tonight.
The way I look at healthcare,
do that argument tonight.
The way I look at healthcare is if I'm going to say this real quickly, that I don't necessarily, I'm not 100% opposed to the government paying for healthcare if we first got rid of, at the very least, 95% of the war on drugs and our wars overseas and all of these terrible policies. If we figured out how to save
peace tax,
trillions,
bonus,
a peace bonus.
If we got rid of trillions and trillions of dollars of wasteful spending, including the Milwaukee Bucks arena and things like that, and then the government was like only taxing us 1 or 2%, and they were like, okay, what would you like us to do with that money? And this also being maybe that they don't pay for the roads either. And the government had this money that they had stolen, from us through taxation, and we had a choice about it. Providing healthcare to the poor is something I could be okay with. Let
me tie together the eugenics part of what we were just talking about.
All right, you got about 1 minute.
Okay. Free birth control. Why free birth control? Why is that an essential benefit? Not cheap birth control, free birth control.
Which isn't free because somebody's paying for it.
Of course.
Right?
But,
So why should I pay for somebody else's birth control? That's
before
the
show
question.
tonight, I went out to a website where you can get pharmacy discounts. And right here in Madison, you can get birth control pills from between $15 to $20 a month. That's it. That's all. That is not an expensive. I don't care how poor you are. $15 to $20 a month for birth control is not that high of a burden to pay. And if you got insurance, it'll probably be less than that. So, why is it so vital to have free birth control?
I'm sure insurance pays for it because they'll pay for a vasectomy. They don't want you having babies if you're on insurance.
Who are the women with the pink pussy hats yelling the loudest about a war on women and free birth control? Who is it?
I don't know.
It's not